Welcome to the Unforgiving 60 with your hosts, Ben Pronk and Tim Curtis. As two ex-SAS guys armed with MBAs, Ben and Tim seek out people leading lives less ordinary and talk with them about how they fill their unforgiving minutes and what helps them go, always, a little further. Like intellectual bowerbirds, we aim to collect shiny little objects of knowledge that we think can help build better humans.
Welcome to the Unforgiving 60 podcast. I'm Tim Curtis, as always with my co-host Ben Pronk.
And Tim, we are doing an end-of-year wrap-up.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, Tim. I'm going to call this the Theatre RV.
Oh, nice. It is RV 29. We actually started this year with RV 28.
Like so many facets of our life, Tim, we're just falling apart.
It is that nugget of brilliance that 29 follows 28.
Now, for our long-suffering listeners, you might recall an RV, especially in the early seasons, would be when Tim and I would get together. RV, a rendezvous in military parlance, is a place of reconsolidation, and we'd use the RVs to reflect on stuff, episodes, happenings, goings-on, whatnot. And this one, as an end-of-year one, I think should be our Theatre RV.
That's right.
So for non-military listeners, you generally have a series of RVs, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. And I'm really struggling to think what they were. It's been a while. But you'd have an immediate...
There's this one here. There was the one before that,
the one
before that,
yeah,
and then the next one. And then if you can't find that one, go to the other one.
So there'd be places where if you got separated in a patrol or maybe after a battle or a gunfight or something, you could reconsolidate with friendly troops.
Or maybe you just got lost.
As a young officer, as an old officer, that was also still a good chance. So say you've wandered off, you've got your compass upside down and you mapped the wrong way round. In that case, you're probably not going to find the RV anyway.
Unlikely, unless you remember your celestial navigation.
Ooh, yeah, which you won't. Let's face it. You won't. But the idea was you'd have sort of an immediate RV, and then if you couldn't find that, you'd go back to maybe a previous night's location somewhere you could find. And then if all of that turned to worms and you couldn't find any of your friends, you'd go to the Theatre RV. And apparently someone would catch you. It was all pretty... It was
pretty loose. There was all of these quite odd timings. Yeah, the Theatre RV will open for 15 minutes on the hour.
And they were fucking miles away as well. You'd be doing well. Like, okay, well, yeah, we're just north of Bagram and the Theatre RV's in bloody Townsville or something. It's like, yeah. I don't know how we got onto that, but this can be our theatre.
So what you're essentially saying is we're miles away right here.
We are miles away from where we want to be, and you and I are here talking about the year that was 2022.
In December 2022. Well, should we start with some stats?
Yeah, Tim, you're good at stats.
Oh, I like a good stat. 21 episodes in 2022. As always, starting on Australia Day, the 26th of January or thereabouts. We started with Harry Garside. He was episode 1 of season 4. We didn't do any RVs outside of this one. 21 straight episodes, which is much lower than our previous years. But a lot of that has to do with the amount of travelling that we're back doing. Yeah. It was pretty rare that we were in the office at the same time this year.
Yeah, we didn't actually see a lot of each other.
Fucking excellent.
It was a good year. But stats are down. I mean, I think the first couple of seasons we started off 50-odd.
We were trying to do one a week, but that hasn't really been sustainable in the last couple of years.
Yeah. And there was a lot of filler. I think some of the RVs they were always pretty good. But 21 episodes.
21 episodes, 104 countries we were listened in. Interestingly, it's 104 countries plus unknown. Ooh. And unknown had us stream, downloaded, listened to 2% of episodes this year, wherever unknown is.
Really? So not a known country?
Unknown country is pretty high.
Ooh. Could this be one of those... Don't some of those billionaires have sort of things in international waters that are non-sovereign states?
Oh, that's interesting. Yes, outside territorial waters. Or no fixed abode.
Extraterrestrial. Do you reckon we're streaming...
Maybe it's on the...
Intergalactic.
the Mars Lunar rover.
Oh, yeah, that little thing.
Australia? Oh, in fact, you could nearly pick the top 4, but I'll guarantee you won't pick the 5th country, that we're most
I'm going
listened.
Five Eyes. We're big in the Five Eyes.
Okay, let's hit me. So Australia, that's a no-brainer. Over 80% of our listeners are in Australia. Next?
UK.
Incorrect. It's US, but not bad. Australia, US, UK. Number 4?
Like UAE.
No, you said Five Eyes.
Aren't they fun?
And then you're like, Australia, UK, US, and the United Arab Emirates.
No. I was going for the random one because I thought we were big in the UAE.
Not bad. It's New Zealand, number 4. Number 5.
Well, you said it wasn't Five Eyes. Okay, so Canada doesn't rate.
It does at 7.
Okay. Can I say UAE?
I gave you a clue on this, but you won't remember. UAE is 6.
Yeah.
5?
South Sudan.
I thought you might get close there because it's not South Sudan, but it is in the South Pacific.
Fiji?
No, I gave you a clue. It was several months ago.
Come on, mate.
And I said, check this out with a bullet.
Yeah, right. Tonga?
Vanuatu. So Vanuatu at number 5. If you're listening in Vanuatu, can you email us and tell us why?
No, but thank you first.
Yeah.
Probably more appropriate.
Had my honeymoon in Vanuatu. Amazing country.
Yeah, never been.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely fantastic. UAE, Canada, Ireland, which we had the wonderful pleasure of visiting this year and running a resilience workshop in.
What an epic, just country visit, people, such hospitality.
Yeah. Then Romania, Germany, and the list goes on to 104 countries plus unknown.
Wow.
At 2%. So 21 episodes, and it's not really fair to compare them because they're all slightly different, but they're all broadly equivalent in the amount of downloads.
Yeah.
The top few, if I was to cite a few, and some of this is a bit corrupted because the way that the stats present, they can only do in detail the last 6 months. Near IL.
Yeah, near and far.
Yep, being indistractable. Made the word up. I might make a word up too.
You do it all the time.
I might make this word up. Indefatigable.
Ooh. It's like, do you remember distrominate?
Yeah, unfortunately that indefatigable is already a word.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Latin
word.
French. Unable to be fatigued, broadly speaking.
Wouldn't that just be unfatigable?
Yeah, no, it's not.
Indefatigable.
Yeah. Let's check the etymology in a tick.
Sure. But that's cool. Okay, yeah, Near was a great episode.
Yeah,
very polished, wasn't he? Like, really just got his point across very convincingly.
Very good.
Did not ramble, unlike the previous 15 minutes of
RV29.
Yes.
Hopefully I pressed play. Oh yeah, I did. Press record.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of people in my travels have commented about the Near IL episode, that it was really helpful in giving order to the way they bring focus and attention to their lives, the time boxing concept.
Yeah, I've used that a little bit, plugging in things. I mean, I'm a slave to my calendar. In fact, so much so that I have all these sort of weird sync issues with home calendars, work calendars, phone calendars, desktop calendars. But if something's not in there, I go full Ron Burgundy and basically just miss it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is good. And if something is in there, I do it, including, thinking time or whatever.
Mark Wales, who we had in this very studio, our renovated shower cubicle.
Shower block.
It's small,
yeah,
but we had the big fella in.
Always a great chat with Mark.
Was good, and he'd just come off the back of winning Survivor. Did we have the spoiler alert about how he will now be appearing in the next Mad Max? I think we can say that. We did ask him on the Resilience Retreat.
That's right, yeah.
Whether we could spoil that.
I think he said he was happy to, amongst the 10 people there, probably not the 15 people that listen to this podcast, but it's probably secret's still safe.
The great outback adventurer, Bo Miles.
Yeah, what a champion.
Just really simple things.
Yeah. But again, and it's that sincerity and authenticity, I guess, that, and, he's a pretty well-known person. He's in demand. He's obviously very, got a great story and great stories. But couldn't do enough to make the podcast happen. Really generous with his time. Really good, humble sort of bloke. Gee, it continually impresses me just the calibre of people that are out there, but generally the really good ones are also really good people. Harry Garside, you mentioned before, what a champion as well.
And what wisdom on his shoulders. Unfortunately, the stats aren't really accurate for Harry's episode because he was number one and just the way that the platform's presenting him at the moment. But him and Melissa Wu, amazing. I mean, the level of maturity, staying with Harry Garside for a sec. I mean, 24 years old, he speaks with the wisdom of a 60-year-old.
Yeah, but also that confidence. I mean, you know, I look at sort of my journey with ego and relative degrees of insecurity and worrying what people think and trying to find out who you are and all that sort of bullshit that many of us, I guess, deal with. And you know, as a now 47-year-old, I think I'm starting to get my head around. But it's almost like he was born with just, this is who I am. I'm going to make the best crack of it and not have that influence or that concern, which is just impressive.
That's right. Yeah, doing ballet, not because it's, you know, improving his footwork as a pro boxer, but because it makes him feel uncomfortable. Painting his nails to show a bit of solidarity, and recently wearing a dress at red carpet gala events, with his theory being, well, why can't I wear a dress?
Yeah, and just challenging. And this is what, and I've been reflecting on this with a couple of other sort of parents, we're both parents of teenagers, but I think the, you know, massive generalisation, but the current crop of teenage boys seem a lot more comfortable with just being good humans and not trying to be whatever they think a bloke should be or whatever they think tough should be, whatever they think cool should be. And I'm seeing it at my daughter's school, high school, you know, boys doing stuff because they enjoy it, you know, including theatre, arts, whatever, you know, that's not necessarily down that trope of you know, masculinity or whatever.
Yeah, you've got to play football, you've got to play cricket in the summer, you've got to be fighting down the back of the lockers at lunchtime.
Smoking durries behind the bike sheds.
No,
it's really cool.
Yeah,
and obviously people like Harry Garside are championing that that kind of individuality and doing what you're interested in and being who you are.
And we talked also really quickly before about Melissa Wu. I love that episode. Pro diving since she was 12 years old, and now diving, you know, with young teenagers who have turned professional. And you mentioned
Ruby.
One of Charlie's friends, Ruby.
And she, Melissa. I mean, she's hardcore. Like all the time, you know, she's making time for her friends, and she seems to have a wonderfully balanced life. But she's training, you know, that's her focus. And again, just really impressive at a really young age.
I love watching her. She's in the gym doing Olympic weightlifting and you know, still plenty of diving training out of the water. And
by the way,
water.
Smashing an SAS reality show. It's
in between it all.
Yeah.
Brad McElroy.
Yeah.
Macca, you know, incredibly well listened to. A really powerful episode. Macca at 19 was a survivor of the Sari Club, Bali bombing 2002. He's carried mostly the psychological scars of that for 20 years.
Unreal. Well, we had him in the studio as well, and I reckon someone was cutting onions in this little room at a few points there. It was just very, I don't know, raw or visceral, and not confected, you know, not... you know, made up or any of that sort of stuff. Just again, that word authenticity. Just told the story, warts and all. And gee, what an incredible, brave, just strong human. Yeah,
and very matter of fact. He dropped in a couple of days ago, brought us a Christmas card, a big thick thing actually. And I said to Macca, as we were having a bit of a catch up, I said, "Gee, mate, I hope it's money." He said, "It's better than money." I thought, it must be a voucher for a bottle shop or something. And then we opened it, and guess what popped out? It was a Christmas card. On the front it had Meowie Christmas. We opened the Christmas card, and here's what happened. Meow 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 meow. So you're like, that's pretty funny. Let's better than money. That's I don't know if it's better than money, but then it got to about this point, we're like, okay, closed the card. We closed the card. It didn't turn off. We're like, hang on, open the card, close the card, open the card, close the card. No. This is a setup. It's not able to be turned off. So I say to Andy, find the kill switch. We can't possibly be listening to this. We tear open the back of the card. It's booby-trapped.
Really?
With a glitter bomb. Fortunately, we identify the booby trap. We bypass the booby trap and hit the kill switch. But that's genius. If you want to be really annoying, go online, Google Meowie Christmas Card, and you can buy them online. They cannot be turned off. And when you try and rip out the battery, it sets off the glitter bomb. Genius.
That is cool.
Thanks, Macca. I did send Macca a note saying you're an absolute you-know-what. But he thought it was very, very funny. So Mick Nevin, second time round, we had Mick.
Second, third.
Maybe it is third.
It's
Three-peat. He was awesome, and maybe more to follow on him because we used Mick on a resilience retreat recently, bringing comedy, the link between resilience and comedy.
I liked it.
Pretty strong.
Yeah.
I really like Shannon Paulson.
Yeah, so did I.
US Apache pilot. She was one of the first in the US Army, talking about, again, breaking stereotypes.
Yeah. I don't know. I was really interested in Shannon's story going into it, and we'd seen her website, and she looked incredibly impressive. And I was almost, if I'm terribly honest, gearing myself for a bit of kind of, American rah-rah and sort of real, I guess maybe a bit of bravado. Given all that she's done, she'd be definitely justified in being that. But again, just an incredibly humble, I keep using that word, authentic. But the thing that I found really cool with her story was, the helicopter stuff is amazing. And I've got a soft spot for helicopters and, my father and all that sort of stuff. Army aviation will always have a sort of soft spot in my heart. But the stuff I found really interesting was her own story, her upbringing, her mountaineering, happened to her parents, tragic, a bear attack of all things. And just that aspect of it, in addition to the aviatrix side of things, I thought the wider story was just incredible.
She's indefatigable.
Absolutely indefatigable.
So, indefatigable, etymology, 1580s.
Oh, yeah.
Latin origin, largely translating to untiring. So, unable to tire out a bull. All right, I could do more etymology on that, but that's enough.
Maybe not.
That's enough. What else? Reflecting on 2022, what did you enjoy, broadly?
Well, actually, I've got a couple of questions for you, Tim.
Oh, so there is some stuff.
Yeah, there are some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There is some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
From your perspective, what was the biggest world development in 2022?
When did Ukraine kick off? That has to be it.
Yeah,
and even if it was late 2021, then
no, it was February or March or something. Yeah.
Okay. So that's it. That's right, because it was we were kind of coming out of the cold period, never find a land war in Asia. Never invade Russia in the winter.
State on state war.
Yeah,
I guess we'd seen Iraq and Kuwait, but and isn't that wasn't there a rule for a long time that no two countries with a McDonald's would ever invade each other?
Right. Well, that's
been
a
little
disproven.
social barometer, so that's off. But I've reflected to a couple of people. I spent a quarter of a century in the military, kind of thinking we'd grown past that, that we were beyond state-on-state war. We'd still have proxy wars, we'd still have skirmishes, we'd still have rubbish and conflict and all that sort of thing. But that full-on state-on-state aggression, that real nationalist drive, expansionist sort of ideology, I thought we were past it, but turns out we're not.
And how about the leadership takeaways? Two very contrasting leaders. We've got to be careful which side of the equation we sit on, because naturally we will expose our bias.
Well, also, and I think it does cause us to challenge our own propaganda. You know, what are we getting fed? And it is so easy in all of these things to paint an other or a bad guy. Putin seems to be doing a pretty good job of painting himself as a sort of Hitler-esque bad guy. But, you know, you've got to be aware it's through a filter of a Western lens, and we've probably got confirmation bias for all the particularly crazy stuff. But even maybe taking that into account, you look at the kind of dysfunction and megalomania of a dictator-style regime that manifests in Putin versus the man of the people, Vladimir Zelensky.
Yeah, I don't need a ride. I need weapons.
I need ammunition. What? And isn't that just that's a Churchill-esque quote that is so powerful. Yeah.
And the power of the people. I mean, the community just galvanised by this, and the amount of difficulty the Russians have had to get and hold any piece of terrain.
Yeah, which I think speaks, again, that thing that we haven't had an existential conflict, well, through the Western lens since the sort of end of the Second World War. And I think we've potentially forgotten that, if it's not a discretionary war, people are fighting for their very existence, for their way of life, for their culture, and, we're slow to learn. Russia's particularly slow to learn. I mean, Afghanistan, Chechnya, now this. But, we're not far behind in terms of some of the hijinks we've pulled and from the Western perspective. But, it's kind of scary, I think, that sort of thing's back on the table. I must admit I feel a bit better. In the immediate sort of months after Putin invaded, I was really concerned about the signals that were sending to Xi and Taiwan and those sort of precedents in terms of the world response, and how that would play into the Chinese calculus for that move. I think as it's dragged on, the Russians have stuffed the logistics up on a 4-hour drive, let alone a couple of 100 miles of sea air gap that China would be facing in Taiwan. Hopefully it's causing, just from a pure military logistics perspective, it's causing pause for reconsideration in the South China Sea.
And, now into winter, it's difficult to see how either side could win.
General Winter, been around since Napoleon. Yeah.
You can turn Stalingradish
if
it hasn't already.
Yeah, no, it'd be pretty ugly. And also pretty ugly, the recent targeting of power grid. I was doing a workshop actually with a power utility yesterday, and we were talking about purpose and citing, look what happens when you turn the lights out. It really, that access to power that we all take for granted, having that deliberately targeted as a way of trying to break the will of the people. It's pretty nasty move.
Well, that's number one. That has to be.
Yeah, I thought you'd say that number
year.
One,
and we've probably got our Times Man of the Year right there.
Yeah, I think so.
I think he's actually at $1 to be Time Man of the Year.
Right. If you're a
betting man
of the year,
lots of good.
Yeah, that could be a good investment. I actually reckon I'm going to go out on a limb here. I agree with you. Ukraine, biggest world development. I actually think there's been a couple just recently which are going to be harbingers of things to come. Advances in fusion technology. So a recent, as in last week, I think, sort of small-scale experiment that was able to release more energy from fusion than it put in, which could bode very well for, the energy future. And also advances in AI. I don't know, we were talking yesterday very briefly about this ChatGPT, which I think is really fascinating / scary. This essentially a computer that passes the Turing test that is indistinguishable in a lot of cases from a human interaction. It's been programmed and fed and sort of curated by humans, but can give you sort of recipes if you throw a bunch of ingredients at it. If you ask it to write a short story in the format of Haruki Murakami about a dog who found an umbrella, it will do a very good job of that. It can write college essays. It can write pretty much pretty advanced code, 98% sort of fit for a lot of coding applications. So really starting to sort of progress into this fourth industrial revolution where computers are not just challenging the physical capability, or machines are not just challenging the physical capabilities of humans, but the cognitive and creative, which does raise, as we discussed yesterday, all sorts of wonderful questions about what does it mean to be a human, and is there anything unique about being a human that's different from a computer that can do the same sort of things. I reckon it's some interesting questions, and yeah, I reckon, you look at the Terminator 2 when they have those wonderful sort of backstories of how things led to it. You see these kind of technologies. It'll be interesting to see how they manifest.
We still don't have a hoverboard, though. That was supposed to happen. Back to the Future. The DeLorean cannot go forward, cannot go back in time. Where's the hoverboard? Can someone, don't worry about AI. Let's get a good quality hoverboard going.
This is why the machines will find very little resistance.
That's right. I'll be a mere speed bump in their way to world domination.
No, I think, Tim, you'll be one of the first strung up for your bloody, I don't know what they do. Keep your eyes open and use your cognitive power to feed the machine.
You bite the hand that feeds until it bites back or until it bleeds it. Ooh, baby, can't you understand or can't you see the pain that you're putting me through? Yeah, I got my eye on
you. Okay, so the biggest law development, Ukraine /AI/fusion. Book. Best book you've read this year?
I'm reading Mastery, Robert Greene at the moment.
Okay.
In fact, you know me, I'm reading about 8 books at the same time. My biggest complaint about Mastery? The font's too small. Remember I showed you the font? Look at this.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Look, it's interesting. Reinforces many of the things that we've talked about, written about, on how do you become a master, a virtuoso. It just comes down to belief and hard work, making contributions. There's some really good evidence that the way you become an expert is not with these grand plans. I mean, Mozart didn't set out to be, an amazing composer. In fact, interestingly, his father dissuaded him from being a composer. He said he should be doing other things because that's what earned money, and being a composer didn't earn money. And Mozart decided, I'm not listening to you, Dad. You're exposing your bias, your prejudice, what you think I can't do, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And kind of the rest is history. So it's the incremental little things, and having a look at some of the research alongside how do we get really good at anything. There's plenty of research, looking at you being a runner. On running, runners seem to be used a lot in research. How does a runner become really good? Well, they're not thinking about the 50-miler or the, sort of 100K ultra. They're just thinking about the next stop sign or catching the person in the blue shorts.
Yeah.
So it comes back to the 10,000 hours.
Deliberate practice.
Yeah, that's right. Deliberate conscious practice. It comes back to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, flow state.
Yeah.
What are you doing that's a little bit more difficult than you're comfortable with? And consistency. How are you building these habit patterns that enable you to just get incrementally better?
Yeah. Look, I think that the jury is in on this, that there's so much, everything from, I guess, Duckworth stuff on grit through to, Dweck's stuff on growth mindset through to obviously Erickson's work on deliberate practice. It all reinforces that same thing, that it is about having that approach of, deliberately going in with achievable stretch goals and then working on those, critiquing them, reinforcing, progressing. I read an interesting article, actually, the Farnam Street blog. If anyone's not doing that, but anyway, it's a good blog. But it was talking about deliberate practice and a really in-depth sort of blog on this. It said, though, interestingly, that deliberate practice is necessary but not sufficient for world standard. It was very clear saying that not everyone can be Roger Federer or Jakob Ingebrigtsen, for you 1,500-metre fans out there, that you need to do it to get to that level, but not everyone who does it will get to that level. There are still genetics, there is still luck, there is still environment, all of these things that sort of play into it. I think it is absolutely. I like the term it used, exactly that, necessary but insufficient to actually achieve virtuosity.
Yeah. In fact, it's interesting you talk about genetics. Yesterday, talking to a psych who had been a semi-professional runner, had never quite made it in the big time, but had certainly been around them, and he talked about running with Steve Monaghetti, who around about my height, so 5'10"-ish, 60 kilos was his running weight. Like at my leanest, I'm exactly that same height, 78. So I'm nearly giving away 20 kilograms, which would be a phenomenal amount when it comes to a running event.
They are, as you say, I've sort of gotten into distance running and interested in the sport. They are lean, like ridiculously lean, and you sort of don't get an appreciation until you see them up close. But yeah, those kind of comparisons. Like, where would you find? Actually, I'm looking at you now.
A little 2-pound pudding just to.
I reckon you could find some of that. But even stripped down, your mid-70s, high 70s. And, I mean, obviously, no upper body muscle. There's that real specialisation aspect. And there's even some really interesting stuff. The debate on genetics in the East African running community, which is obviously dominant at the moment, it sort of waxes and wanes, and there's kind of these racist undertones sometimes when people sort of start going into certain genetic groups predisposed to different things. But one of the things they do identify is that generally, they'll have long limbs and nice levers, but very slim calves. So the things at the extremities,
That's
which obviously have to travel the furthest. So your calves and your ankles and those sorts of things are
you
very
don't want too
lean.
much weight.
You don't want too much weight, and the sort of pendulum effect of having lighter calves is apparently quite significant.
Right.
So some fascinating things, and nature and nurture obviously contribute.
And that'd be true with, there'd be many sporting events that are comparable. Weightlifting would be one. If you've got levers that have to move further, then
rowing's a massive one.
Exactly. There's a great example. Basketball, sort of height, power, and the transferability of things in between. Yeah. Look, and sort of coming back to that mastery, virtuosity, we talked about the adult learning cycle with a bunch of clients down in Hobart. I'm fortunate enough to do work with the Antarctic Division about that plan, act, review, learn, and how often in our organisations we just do the first two things. We plan, act, and we don't plan. We just act.
Particularly if we're looking and talking about leadership. Sorry to jump in, but
sorry
to talk while
sorry to be talking while you're interrupting.
But we think about we'll just do stuff and hopefully get better, but that's not deliberate practice. It's not a matter of just getting mindless reps in. It is actually sitting down before it and saying, okay, I want to get better, not just at leadership, this big broad thing. Tomorrow I'll do some leadership and get better at it. It's like really necking down, I think, and I like the idea of a hypothesis. My hypothesis is if I were a better public speaker, I'd be a more effective leader. If I was able to have difficult conversations, I'd be a more effective leader. If I was able to communicate more clearly or, sort of translate strategic vision into tangible day-to-day action, I'd be a better leader. And then run an experiment, put it into practice, and then, as you said, review, collect the data, analyse it, modify your hypothesis.
Yeah, that's right. And share the learnings, that's the component of knowledge into wisdom, isn't it? How do we embed it in order to institutionalise it, to make it part of culture? And there's a lot of risk and threat in that for leaders, because you might get to that review bit and realise the decisions I made were poor.
Yeah.
And in a true environment where everyone's got an equal and powerful voice, that dissenting voice you might not like.
Yeah. But again, the workshops we're doing with emerging leaders, this paradox that vulnerability is in fact strength. That, time and again I've had, particularly with one group in a big company that we run the same sort of workshop for their sort of early junior leaders, and we talk about leadership characteristics they like, and time and again it is leaders that can stand next to mistakes they've made, leaders that can stand up and said, I blew this, or this was the wrong decision, and this is how we're going to address it and fix it. And they say that's excellent leadership, and I agree. And I reckon I spent probably about 15 years of my life thinking that's the last thing you want to do as a leader. You don't want to display chinks in your armour. You don't want to, you want to go through pretending you know it all or you've got all the right answers. And of course, that's just bullshit. You can't. And so, I think that idea of having that strength to be vulnerable and to sort of be open about mistakes, to learn from others, to suppress the ego, to ask the questions, what do you think? Maybe your idea is better. Again, great leadership characteristics.
Maybe a little insight into your soul, and a point for reflection is, who gave you a Secret Santa present and what was it? Mine was How to Tell a Joke. So Emily gave me this book called How to Tell a Joke, which is actually quite interesting. It isn't really about how to tell a joke.
It's philosophy,
a book about Cicero and how he used to hold court, but mixing politics with some philosophy with some humour. It's quite clever, very insightful.
We'll link to Mastery and Cicero in the show notes, and actually also to that Farnam Street article on deliberate practice. I think that was really good.
Your reading?
I've been really enjoying fiction. I mentioned Haruki Murakami before. He was close to my tongue, Japanese author. I've read a number of his over the last year. I really loved Norwegian Wood. It was just a really... I don't know, a friend of mine who also really likes Murakami just described his writing as very comforting. You just read it and everything feels okay, even though he's addressing a lot of, I guess, pretty philosophical issues about the human condition. And then on the back of that, a friend just last week gave me a book called Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Izaguro, who's a Nobel laureate. Had written Remains of the Day. And this I thought was an excellent book. It's about an AI, again, hence the kind of recent interest in that. But an artificial friend and this idea of what it is to be human, what it is to feel love and distinction, human and machines, and decision-making and rationality and that sort of thing. But a very easy-to-read sort of parable, I guess, about it. So I don't know, I'm in a little Japanese author kick at the moment.
And what about things, places, other enjoyment in 2022?
My highlight trip was Saudi Arabia. I went there with Andy with a client, a work trip, and just an amazing, fascinating country. I mean, obviously all that's going through MBS, the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Sultan, looking at modernising modernising the country and sort of bringing things forward, and clearly not without controversy, not without rocky roads, not without detractors and sort of opposition. But, a very different country to what... It was my first time there, been all around it in the region, but never into Saudi, and a very different country to what I expected. It was more liberal than I expected. Still not liberal, but certainly we saw... ladies without headwear, without the hijab. We saw lots of women driving. Again, that's not a liberal sort of thing by world standards, but by Saudi standards. Very interesting, in terms of working on the plant, the relationship between the Saudi people and the particularly the immigrant workers was very positive, which is different to other places in the region that I've seen. And the food was incredible. Absolutely off the hook. Really, really good food everywhere we went, including our last meal when our very generous and very friendly, the people were amazing, very friendly hosts found out that Andy and I had never had camel. They sort of were aghast and made sure that the next day's lunch was camel, which was delicious.
Yeah, it's good. And camel's milk specifically, camel's milk ice cream. Check that out. If you ever have a chance to have camel's milk ice cream, it's rock and roll.
Yeah. No, so that was a very enjoyable trip for a whole bunch of reasons.
And they are progressive. MBS has been, very forward-thinking in how do we create more interest in Saudi Arabia. It's nearly life after oil. And check out, there's a giga project called Project NEOM. November Echo Oscar Mike, worth a look, and then a range of mega projects. I've got a couple of mates working over there. A good mate of mine has been in and out doing some work on one of the mega projects. But just mind-boggling, the scale, the magnitude, the vision, the appetite for risk, financial risk and beyond, all assortment of risk.
Yeah. But yeah, like you say, the life beyond fossils, which is, I think, an important question all around the world, and but particularly for those oil-rich, oil-dependent currently nations. What about you? Travel highlight?
Well, I really like. I mean, plenty of great stuff this year. It was nice to be travelling again.
Yes,
I'd forgotten a lot of the poor things about travel, like getting to the airport and waiting around, twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah, and it's different now, isn't it? There's not that surety that your bag's going to arrive or that your next flight's going to actually take off.
It has been plenty of delays and even a cancellation or two. But we had a rocking time in the UK and Ireland.
That was good.
That was awesome. I can't remember whether we've actually talked about that, but it was great. And actually, we spent a week in London. My middle child, eldest daughter Emily, came and joined us for that week. And actually, we were talking about feeling a bit guilty because we didn't have our schedule full for the week.
Yeah,
but that was part of the beauty. I think we were able to get up end of the day Australia time while we were in London. Yeah, reconcile a few things, call the office, make sure there was nothing we needed to close out, and then we're off. Yeah, we're off to Tate Modern and jump on a sightseeing bus and go and see those things that. I mean, I hadn't been to London for maybe 4-5 years, so it was just kind of nice to reconnect.
Same here, and so it was great to see all those things again. And look, I really enjoyed actually the work engagements we had over there. Very different style, very high-end, big multinational corporate resilience presentation.
Yeah, the trading floor, plenty of stress on that
floor.
Yes,
so and great folk there. And then up into the north of Ireland, County Cavan, for just an incredible weekend, really, with a smaller sort of community-based group, again looking at resilience. And, gee, I remember walking into that, and they were tough Irish folk. And I remember, there were, it was I don't know, whatever, there were 60, 70-odd people there in a sort of community hall, and there were some tough old folk, men and women with arms crossed, and I thought, we're about to get eaten alive when we start talking about great gratitude and meditation. But just so open to it and so touched by mental health and well-being. All of them came, well, not all of them, but so many of them came up afterwards talking about losing mates to suicide or friends to suicide and the impacts of economic downturns and how it just drove sort of communities into depression essentially, and really bullish on these ideas of taking charge of their own well-being and looking at doing things that could promote the better outcomes.
Yeah, and we were so well looked after, generous in time, generous financially. I mean, showing us around, taking us to dinner, it's just amazing. We thoroughly enjoyed that. 2023, would we go back to UK, Europe?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No brainer.
Yeah.
That would be awesome, assuming we can fit it into the schedule.
Okay, so we've ticked off your book of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Music discovery.
Ooh.
Have you got a song, band?
I have
to get out to some decent live music.
Yeah, periodically.
Yeah.
Well, this is loaded because I'd be hung, drawn and quartered by my son and his mates, who probably won't listen anyway, if I didn't mention And Enjoy.
And Enjoy.
And Enjoy band. They are on Spotify. A few tunes now on Spotify.
We'll link to there.
My son playing the drums and actually a few of his schoolmates who are doing some really cool thing. They practice hard. house, so you can imagine. yeah. But actually, all of his mates have been coming over and sort of jamming underneath our house, and yeah, it's
Pretty
great.
cool.
It's really good fun. They have a lot of fun, which is probably one of the big driving reasons. But they've been playing some pubs, and for anyone in Perth, they're playing Mojos. They're opening, I think, on the 17th of January. Might be the 17th or 18th of January in Mojos, which is my favourite live music destination in Perth. It is a tiny little music bar. I mean, you can nearly touch the roof, can't you? It's an incredible place.
Yeah.
Close your eyes. What do you see? It's exactly what you want to me. I'm done. I was never number one.
And a rite of passage. It's sort of, the Eskimo Joe Tame Impalas of the world, they've all played there. It's pretty iconic sort of venue.
Yeah. So, no, I'd have to say I have been enjoying going and watching them. And, the little pump they get after they've played a set,
cool.
You know that feeling. I've never really been up there.
Yeah, it is a great feeling, regardless of how the set goes. It's your little rock star moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And the adrenaline. They'll talk about anything. They're so excited. They're talking about this past, but it's been just an absolute blast to watch them come off stage, and they're stoked about just being up there and entertaining.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
No, good one.
What outside of Kpop? What are you listening to?
A lot of my listening has been, as you noted, sort of getting back into running. I've been doing a lot of, I guess, rediscovering albums, like listening to albums, when you've got a bit of time on your hands as you're doing a run. And so, some of the classic, well, when I say classic rock albums, things like Appetite for Destruction, that is a good, well put together album. Another one that I reckon is just epic and probably underrated on the global stage is Vulture Street, the Powderfinger rock album.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been enjoying stringing those together. I, as a kid, was into the Beach Boys and have gotten back into, and just I'm a I think we've made mockery of my guilty pleasure music. I like pop music, just catchy hooks. Often it's curated and mass produced, but there's something about those kind of earworm songs. The Beach Boys did it well, and then almost that Beatles-esque path into sort of more experimental stuff and some of their later tunes. Yeah, so I've been rediscovering that oeuvre. How do you pronounce that word?
Over and over.
Over and over. But Kpop. Mate, I read an article, it's got to be about 3 months ago, on the band BTS and what a sort of amazing, massive thing it was, and I'd never heard of them, and I was vaguely aware of Kpop. In fact, I was an early adopter. I was actually in Seoul when Gangnam Style, that Psy song, was big in Korea before it had broken. And like you couldn't go anywhere, coffee shop, down the street, whatever, without hearing this Gangnam Style. And it's catchy, obviously. And so I sort of got onto it, and I like to think I brought it back to the Western world. But I hadn't sort of tracked any K-pop since then. And it on the back of that article, started listening to a few tunes, and in that same guilty pleasure fashion, there's some really well put together, catchy pop tunes, and really interesting, just the segue between Hangul, Korean, and English, in the same sentence. And I don't know, I think it probably makes sense. I mean, it's very much a bilingual country. And so, these Korean kids that are sort of rocking out in these two languages, in the same sort of rap breakdown. Like, it's a really interesting sort of, I guess, collision of cultures or whatever. But, it's catchy. I like it. And I also actually quite like, I think the Hangul language is pretty cool, and hearing rap in Hangul is interesting. The shape of the words, the shape of the sounds is very different. But it's kind of cool not knowing what it means. You're sort of rocking along and
Sing along.
You occasionally Google it, and there's some quite banal stuff that they're singing about, but it's catchy.
It's funny the amount of people in my life that I've met from countries that are not native English speaking countries who have learnt English from listening to music and watching English television. I guess that's a way of doing it, isn't it? You know, you kind of learning keywords, although the music must be a bit more difficult than watching a children's English television program like Sesame Street.
I suppose so.
I listened to a podcast with Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan talking with him, a couple of hours episode. Incredibly, like for a guy who was an addict, has sort of come through that.
Have you read Scar Tissue?
I have not.
Ooh.
Yeah, have not. But the things he does for him now, you draw direct parallels into how they contribute to his resilience. You know, close group of friends and family, very tight with them, still great mates with everyone in the band. Meditation, mindfulness, breathing techniques. Before he goes on stage, he brings himself to a point of focus so that he's not flat, blunt, that he is, you know, he's got that sense of arousal so he can perform. It's like really quite interesting. And then physically fit. The things that he does for himself just to keep well and active.
Well, I mean, also, you know, his job involves getting on stage wearing nothing but a sock, a strategically placed tube sock.
But who didn't watch him or doesn't watch him and think, geez, I wish I had a physique like that?
He's cut up for summer. Yeah.
That the video clip of them playing on the roof of the building, Venice Beach. Somewhere California.
It's got to be California. I mean, you know, clearly every song is a love song to California.
Yeah. But really good listen, you know, for someone who even, you know, super famous, probably doesn't need to be doing a lot of these things, but realises that in order to ensure his happiness and longevity, they're necessary.
Yeah.
Really quite interesting.
No, good story. What's the coolest little discovery you've had this year? Is there something you found this year that has sort of moved the needle in your life or made things better or is just cool or just grabbed your attention in some way?
I don't so much do gimmicky things, and I know that's not what you're asking, but trying to do things a bit more consistently. I mean, you know, I love my bike. That's not a this year thing, but trying to be a bit more consistently on it.
When did you start gravel biking? I thought that was
last year.
Was it?
Yeah, it must have been middle of last year. I didn't even know what gravel biking was.
Yeah. Had
some mates of mine that said, hey, look, let's cycle the Tasmanian Trail. I was scratching my head thinking, well, what do you do that on, a mountain bike? And they're like, no, you use a gravel bike, of course, which is the hybrid between a road bike and a mountain bike. And you can configure all sorts of things on it. You know, these Bikepacking, it's called. So all of these different packs that go on your handlebar and your frames off the seat bag and various other locations that let you live off your bike. But yeah, no, that was sort of middle of last year, but trying to be a bit more consistent. And I had a super cool experience. Well, we were down in Hobart and I took my bike and rode the Tasmanian Trail in a gap week between two bits of delivery, which was
solo.
Cool fun. Yeah, the first day and a half with a really great mate of mine, Rob, which was awesome. And then the balance of, where were we, about 5 days just trudging around by myself, including snowing off the back of Mount Wellington. You sort of come over part of Mount Wellington. We're not as close to Hobart. And it was cold.
You're not kidding.
It was cold. And I thought, I should stop, but it's too cold. I'm not stopping. And then, of course, you know, you come down the mountain and finish up in a place called Dover. Amazing. Yeah, it's just very different. Well, thing one, there are hills in Tasmania. We don't have too many hills here in Western Australia.
Well, and not too much snow.
No, not much snow. And that was the other thing. Yeah, the water, the amount of water. Just incredible. Creeks, streams, rivers. I actually had to get my bike serviced on the way. When I came back, it wasn't working as well as it should. The derailleur clutch was having some issues, and it was because of all the rivers I had to push my bike through.
You drowned it.
Yeah, drowned it. Yeah.
Any wildlife?
Yeah, plenty of wildlife. I didn't see any snakes, but apparently in summer there are a lot of tiger snakes.
Right.
But pretty much everything else, all of the birds we don't get, so the eastern rosella.
I actually didn't. Is it New Zealand that doesn't have any snakes? And Ireland?
Yeah, that's right.
I thought most island, ISLANDs, can't you get rid of them?
Apparently not in Tasmania. If you're cycling the Tassie Trail, you're seeing snakes regularly.
And also in Karnak Island, a small island off the coast of WA, just off Garden Island, that we'd often do water operations around. And it's a breeding ground for CSIRO anti-venom, isn't it? Like I think they breed every kind of nasty, dangerous snake out there. And then some idiot goes ashore, catches them, milks them, because you can milk anything with nipples, Greg.
Or fangs.
And very bravely contributes to making antivenines, which clearly save lives. So Karnak Island looks good, not a good place to raft up.
Did sea kayak out there once and then heard about the snakes, put my tippy toes on the beach and thought, I'm not going any further.
I've got visions. Have you ever seen, there's a David Attenborough documentary, and it's this life cycle of these, it's like on the Galapagos or something. And anyway, this little baby lizard hatches, and for some reason its mum lays the eggs sort of 50 metres from the coast where it's going to be safe, or where its colony is or something, and it's got to do this thunder run. And essentially these snakes just come out from everywhere. This bunch of baby iguanas or whatever they are trying to outrun these snakes. I reckon that's what Karnak Island would be like.
I did a Google not long ago, and I've just had to do it again to fact check myself, but there's a place in the world called Snake Island off Brazil. Population 0, but a shitload of snakes.
The aptly named Snake Island.
Exactly. Or critically endangered venomous golden lancehead pit viper.
Nothing about that sounds good.
No, it has a diet of birds.
Yeah.
The snakes became trapped on the island thousands of years ago, following the end of the last ice age, when rising ocean levels disconnected the island from the mainland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's closed to the public. I would want to go there anyway to protect the people and the snake population, but mostly the people.
Mostly the people. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. No, that is a pretty cool moment. I'll give you that.
Speaking about snakes, wildlife, and privileges, amazing to spend a week this year, you and I, walking country with the Nyamal people.
Wasn't it?
That was definitely a highlight for me in 2022. The Nyamal Rangers. Being able to live out in the bush with them for a week. Yeah,
that was awesome. Did we see any snakes?
No, there wasn't any snakes.
Oh, okay.
A lot of wildlife, though.
Yeah, there was a lot of wildlife. And rock art. I mean, what an incredible
We did see a
snake.
No, we did see a snake. Remember they caught a python?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Which I don't like snakes. Not my favourite thing in the world.
Yeah. I can live with snakes.
But no, super privileged. It was an amazing week to see some of the heritage areas, the rock art, just mind-blowing rock art.
Incredible. And so much of it.
Oh, well, you remember the rock wall down that gorge we were walking along that went for a couple of kilometres.
Yep.
We asked the question, how long does this continue for? Don't know. We've never actually walked to the end.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but incredible. That was super cool.
Yeah, that was a great week.
And special thanks to Mark, too, for having us up, the ranger coordinator, and all of the boys. They were just incredible human beings.
It's a lovely segue. Mark posed a really interesting philosophical question when I caught up with him the other day. We were talking about this idea of when to quit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think we've touched on this in some earlier episodes. You know, you get all these wonderful startup mantras: never quit, never, fail forward, keep going, blah, 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 never ever give up. But what if you're flogging a dead horse? You know, what are those indicators? And in fact, it was on the back of a lady called Annie Duke, wrote a book called Quit, The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away, which talks about, from her personally, so she's a journalist but became a poker player. And,
know when to hold them.
Kenny Rogers' wisdom. Apparently, you need to know when to fold them.
And know when to walk away and know when to run.
Yeah. And so, Annie Duke sort of carrying these lessons on into sort of wider life about, having that judgment when to sort of walk away from other projects. What are your thoughts? What would be sort of the indicators that you should quit?
There's probably a bit of Malcolm Gladwellism here, isn't it? What's the tipping point that indicates that what you're doing isn't going to benefit your life, benefit your physiology, your health, and so on and so forth? I don't know, because there's good quitting and there's probably good quitting. The good quitting is, well, I'm going to give up cigarettes. The good quitting is like, your brother, Dr. Dan Pronk, trying to go pro triathlete, realising he's not making it.
So there's distinctions, isn't it? And I think that latter example you use is that one where it's a bit harder because, you're pursuing a goal.
Something you love.
Yeah, not smoking doughs. Or
also something you might love.
Yeah, right. So, if we're talking about meth, then quitting is good, right? But if you're talking about your startup or a life goal.
The thing you're passionate about.
Yeah, and, everyone, and Mozart's dad telling him, no, you'll never be a composer. Those ones where conventional or contemporary wisdom says, no, never give in, follow your dream, keep going towards that goal. But maybe there are times where, no, that goal's unachievable in its current format or going to be counterproductive or going to be a net loss for you in all facets of your life.
Well, maybe I could introduce the wisdom of Napoleon Hill. I mean, is this the place for your mastermind group who are looking at things impartially, independently, without bias or prejudice? I mean, you're probably so close to that, trying to be a pro triathlete or insert your thing, that you don't know what's in the blind spot. You are just blindly trying to get there and realise you're not going to make it. The financial decisions in some ways make themselves. So for things like startups, you're either turning the numbers or you're not. Yeah,
but then that starts bringing in the sunk cost fallacy. Like, oh, gee, we're now 3 years in, we've invested
have to commit even harder.
Yeah. We can't let that. We can't waste that. Yeah,
I think the mastermind group could be really powerful here. I mean, we know you can get so absorbed in your one thing, your misery, your success or pseudo-success, that having a different point of view has been, it's been awesome for us.
Absolutely, and an impartial, non-agenda driven one, and I think that's what Napoleon Hill gets at. And we have that interesting discussion about, the role of your family, and, I still maintain that, there's incredible support, and I know you've never challenged this, that you can get from your family. So we don't want to discard that. But, they are close to it, and they do have the biases and the preconceptions and the potentially limitations that maybe an impartial member of your mastermind group, friend, may not have.
And maybe not to get to that tipping point where it's quit or do not quit, where it's as binary as that, but can you identify along the way where there's moments to adjust, adapt, be a bit versatile, to pivot, so don't quite go in that direction, let's just make some adjustments. And if I could give one example from us, we're very privileged to call Rob Redenbach a mate of ours, and he's been excellent in offering us pretty blunt feedback on some of the things that we do, presentations and workshops. And Rob would say, we're in the margins here, it's going to improve things by X small percent or percentage of percent, but it's still little adjustments, little improvements that hopefully
pursuit.
Making us, or going always a little further, but making us hopefully a little bit more engaging, the messages a bit more sticky, and forcing us to reflect on the things that we're saying. Like, he has course corrected me on some stories that I've told where he said, don't like it, too binary, it could be polarising, and so I have adjusted some of the stuff I talk about as a result of his feedback.
Yeah, and you definitely want that, that aspect of your mastermind group who will give you good, candid feedback and won't. I was going to say won't care about your feelings. Clearly, they care about your feelings, but won't not say something because they're worried about hurting your feelings if they think it's going to be positive for you.
Yeah. I'm smiling because I'm thinking of a couple of circumstances where I've come out of a workshop, a keynote, a presentation thinking, I feel pretty good about that. And then I see Rob walking towards me. I just have this feeling of dread.
Yeah.
But we wanted it. We wanted him to come and run the red pen over
so well.
He does.
And he comes from a place with so much knowledge and expertise himself.
Yeah.
I agree. That mastermind group and, the after-action reviews, that I guess, habitual practice of casting back. And, I mean, we did the same with Dan last year on the wider resilient shield concept and looking at, okay, what's working. And the thing I love that we bring in from our own personal perspective is it's not just the numbers. It's what's bringing us joy, and does the joy outweigh the money, and does the money outweigh the joy, and if you can align all of those things, or at least consider all of those things. I think if you just have a lopsided metric, you're just doing it for money, or you're just doing it because you like it, but it's not bringing in any money, then, it probably is going to end in tears.
Oh, if you're doing it for money, I'll show you the misery. God, how many people do we know that have been doing it for the money, that are clinging to the money or awaiting the next bonus, and they're not particularly happy.
Yeah, and you think about that in order to, what do? You move 2 streets closer to the beach, and you drive a bloody Porsche instead of a
Datsun.
Toyota. Anyway, to each your own. But I think as long as you're looking at that, in order to, and and I think the older you get, the more you realise what is actually going to bring happiness, and sometimes material stuff does that.
Well, to a certain extent, yeah.
But probably not as much as we often give it credit for.
Well, I mean, to the point that you've made before on the Stoics, they were philosophers that looked at problems not just at prima facie value, but, hey, look, what's the opportunity through it? But they weren't strangers to wealth.
No.
Many of them were incredibly wealthy, including
Marcus and Seneca. Yeah. No, absolutely. And, you don't have to live in abject poverty to realise, fulfilment. But, the two aren't direct correlates, I think, is the big Stoic thing.
Those hours spent walking in the rain, those hours can't bring back no more for you. You think that now it is a game that you can play, decide the way you use your hand to man my heart. Well, I'm telling you, you tear down in this room, I got my eye on you.
Goal for 2023?
Got a couple. So I am doing a couple of 1100k bike rides, I hope. One definitely.
Mawson's Trail?
Yep, so Mawson Trail with some close mates of mine, some who are in my mastermind group, some people I've never met before, so I'm looking forward to that. Be 10 or 11 days, very north of South Australia down to Adelaide, cross country, again bikepacking, carrying all of our gear, so that should be unpleasant, which is what I'm looking forward to.
Does sound unpleasant.
And I'm hoping to also ride another one before that, time permitting, if I can find a window of, 10, 11, 12 days.
Down south?
So Munda Biddy Trail.
Yep.
For anyone that hasn't heard of that, I think it's the longest purpose-built slant design cycling trail in the world, 1,100 kilometres from...
be. Surely that
Perth.
Appellation.
I wouldn't be purpose-built.
Okay,
cyclist
you're getting on technicalities
only.
Here.
But happy to be course corrected on that. Yeah, from Perth down to Albany, so lots of change in vegetation, surface of the riding trail. I've ridden a fair section of that, but I've never ridden it end to end, and I'm really keen to do it. And actually, some conversations in our footy club have started up. Guys saying, "Well, wouldn't mind doing that, maybe in a slightly different way." And the different way is from pub to pub.
Whatever it takes.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. But and then
also
coming back the other direction, so doing south to north that would enable people, family, friends, kids to come and ride sections.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, people do it in sections, don't they?
Yes.
They get them under video over a year. They do a segment in a weekend and then come back and start at that finish point.
That's right,
Like
and there's trail towns, so you can do it quite comfortably, staying in trail towns. There's huts, so there's track huts that are pretty basic with bunks and a bike rack, sometimes an area where you can work on your bike, and some tables and chairs and a long dropper toilet. But yeah, pretty primitive. Or if you're completely antisocial like I am, you just sleep out. So yeah, that one. And as you know, I want to run the longest marathon in the world.
Tell our listeners about this particular goal.
Well, it's one that I'm training for right now.
A destination marathon, I'm all interested. And then when you started to explain it a bit more, I became slightly less so.
Marathon de Médoc.
Yep.
So it's through one of the wine regions of France. And I keep saying instead of water stops. I don't know if it is instead of, but I'll stay with the line. Instead of water stops, you have wine stops, cheese stops,
which you must,
oyster stops, meat stops. I think in order to win, by the way, it's fancy dress. I think in order to win, there is some mandatory number that you have to complete. But yeah, it's for me, I don't necessarily like running, but I am running at the moment. And the more you do it, of course, the more you enjoy it. But I like the idea of having that little meaningful challenge with a twist. I have asked a few people to come and join. No takers as of yet. But you have to run. You can't walk.
Yeah.
It's not I'll walk my way through the marathon course.
It sounds like absolutely the worst of all worlds. You can't enjoy the food and certainly the running. I do remember you told me that before I ran that the Perth Marathon in October, and I remember sort of about the 37k mark, it was all starting to get pretty emotional, and I was, as our British friends would say, threaders. And for some reason into my head popped the idea of someone offering me camembert and smoked oysters at that stage.
Just a couple of oysters.
Yeah,
maybe a nice glass of Chardonnay, sir.
Or no, like a good hearty Burgundy or something.
Glass of port, maybe.
Oh, Jesus. No.
Cognac.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Well, I'm in training for one component of that, as I demonstrated at our Christmas party last year. Last week. Yeah.
No, very strong.
So that's 2023. And then 2024, I'd like to climb a mountain.
Cool.
Yeah, something that is technically pretty challenging, but I'm not technically conditioned. I'd have to go back and relearn some technical skills. But I've already started making some inquiries there. And a good friend of mine and yours, Scott, who's living in Europe, keeps throwing these lines out to come and do some cycling through Europe with him, which, that look awesome. It's just mind-blowing.
It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, particularly the gravel loops in Europe around the lakes at altitude are just awesome. And it's the sort of thing that you can take partners on. You can take kids. They can go town to town and you can be absorbed in your misery with 2,000 metres of climbing a day on some of these rides. Yeah. It looks pretty hardcore. What about you, 2023?
I want to. So I had that sort of meaningful goal of running the marathon this year, my first in 26 years, which was pretty cool. And I want to do some faster stuff. So I'm currently in a training block to go for a 10,000 metre track race, the WA Masters 10,000 metre championship in March, which I want to give a nudge. The non-Zimmer frame category.
Is it aged?
It is, yeah. So I think I don't actually know. I think it's an all-in race, but it's age group,
gotcha.
45 to 50, I think.
Yep.
And it's one of those funny
things.
Do
you get to wear purple shorts to show people that you're over 70?
Like in the footy, so no one tackles me.
Can't tackle that person.
Hopefully you don't get tackled regardless. Yeah, but it's one of those funny things where, you think you get old and you think, I might even have a nudge at, a bit of podium or and people are still running low 30s in that sort of age division.
Well, coming back to Moneghetti, the numbers might not be incredibly correct, but 15-minute 5K he's just run it.
Yeah, he ran 15:51 at age 60. Yeah, which is an unverified world record, and only unverified because the track didn't have 8 lanes and it was hand, not electronic timed. But sub 16 at age 60, ridiculous.
I'd be happy to go sub 20.
Well, and, you know, while we're geeking out on, and I know you weren't intending to, but on running stats, long-standing Australian marathon records were both broken 2 Sundays ago. So Deke's record from 1986, so whatever that is, 30-odd years, and Benita Willis's record from about 10 years later. So these really long-standing records. Brett Robinson smashed it in Fukuoka, so he got 2:07 high. And Sinead Diver, who ran in Valencia, beat the female record at age 45.
Wow.
So, yeah, just incredible performances. And, you know, a lot of sort of consternation in the running community. Like, those are pretty massive events that sort of go by unnoticed.
There's a bit of a what's your excuse, isn't there, when you're thinking, I don't
a
really
bit too
like
old.
running, and my knees are sore or my back hurts.
Yeah. And so that 45, like, you know, that's the Australian record. It's not an age record. It's not a Masters record. None of that.
Right.
Australian record. It's actually a World Masters record. Yeah, really incredible.
Speaking of what's your excuses, big shout out to Sam Bloom, Samantha Bloom, who won the Australian parasurfing competition.
Yes.
Went across to California.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if the Red Hot Chili Peppers are playing on a roof. Probably not. To compete in the World Champs.
Yeah.
And she came 4th.
Wow.
Yeah. Check her out on Insta. There's some beautiful pictures taken by her husband, Cam.
Handy with a camera.
Very handy with a camera.
Cam with the camera.
Yeah, just really enjoying life.
What a champion, and so humble, self-deprecating. I mean, we had the absolute privilege of having both Cam and Sam on our retreat. So that was in the lead up to this championship, and you know, just really positive attitude when we were talking about the world champs, and yeah, I'll give it my best crack, and no hubris, none of that sort of garbage. Just really sort of joie de vivre, you know, like really enjoyed the opportunity, happy and excited about the event, and the result would come as it came.
Try and find her in a photograph without a smile on her face. And of course, we interviewed Sam and Cam this year as well. And then we were wonderfully fortunate. In fact, linked up really because you spoke alongside Sam at an event.
Yeah, I was a bit starstruck when, you know, I knew I was on the panel with Sam, and, you know, just sort of met them beforehand when we're doing all this. And I don't know, again, I sort of thought, they'd be fairly dismissive of some absolute random on the panel with them. But just genuinely interesting and interested humans. Great chat with Cam there, and yeah, we sort of decided on the back of that, yeah, we need to do something.
Which we did on the podcast, so check that episode out. And of course, as you mentioned, they came on the retreat.
Yeah, it's great fun.
And yeah, Sam was awesome. She told her story at the retreat, and fortunately the lights were down because, oh God, it's a really wonderful story, you know, one of tragedy and heartbreak and loss and disappointment and nearly dismissing the quality of your life and then clawing your way out of that. In her case, through the introduction of Penguin.
Little magpie called Penguin.
Yeah.
And beautifully, like so powerfully accompanied by Cam's photos. You know, Cam,
that's right.
an incredible photographer.
Yeah, photos and video.
Yeah. But, you know, and it obviously just been snapping a chronicle of these beautiful sort of studio quality photos, just I guess as a chronicle of their lives together. But so many of them just really complemented Sam's story and the way they'd put together. I tell you, if you get a chance to see Sam speak, leap at it. It's a really good, as you said, an incredible journey. Bring your tissues for the middle bit, but you'll walk away feeling really good.
Yeah.
And actually, another shout out in terms of that event, but Mark Wales, who we've been friends with for ages, and I have seen him speak in different things and all that sort of stuff, but he presented on his story, and I just thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Like really, even knowing the story, knowing him, you know, it was another really polished, very funny, self-deprecating performance.
Yeah, and you've got to read his book, Survivor, and if you ever get a chance to see Mark speak, yeah, it's a beautiful little trajectory, highs and lows and ins and outs of his life.
Yeah.
From, you know, childhood all the way through to where he is now. And, you know, special shout out to Staying On Fitzroy, special shout out to those that came on the retreat. the facilitators, but most importantly, the participants.
Yeah.
It was a really wonderful group of human beings.
Wasn't
it? Where did we start? Thursday lunchtime through to Sunday lunchtime or thereabouts. The last night we did a semi-formal dinner, and we start semi-formal, then we go pretty informal. And someone said, "How good's this? It just feels like we're all family." That was a wonderful little conclusion for me.
And I think for me, we'd obviously done things with formed groups and sort of everything from school groups to corporate groups to groups of friends. But this was the first where it was a very heterogeneous group, and we had sort of ages early 20s to late 70s. We had professions ranging from psychiatrists through to sort of builders, through to sort of comedians, through to care workers, through to non-profit, through to all sorts of different walks of life. And I wasn't worried, but I was interested as to how this little experiment, this melting pot, would come together. One thing I hadn't expected was how positive it'd be in terms of removing the facade. Like, I think if we'd got a whole group of, I don't know, pick your industry, real estate agents together, or a whole group of doctors together or whatever, there'd be that commonality that would possibly cause a bit of competition or sort of measuring. And I'm not going to let my guard down because I'm too close to this person. But when you've got a 20-year-old builder talking to a 79-year-old retiree, talking to a 60-year-old speech therapist, talking to a sort of 30-year-old, police person, there's no competition. Yeah. And they're all there to understand these things a bit better, to learn a bit more about themselves, to learn a bit more about other people, to get some tools. And straight away, people were just so open, so in a very positive sense, vulnerable, and so willing to help and learn. That was a cool aspect that I hadn't expected. Yeah,
plenty of laughs, certainly a few tears, but the tears were great too. I mean, tears of joy, not so much tears of sadness.
Don't think so, no.
Little people, well, I think most, if not all, taken out of their comfort zone at moments in time, but very safe audience. By the end of the first day, everyone recognised that it was okay to show any emotion, good, bad or indifferent, to show your vulnerability, and that was, I think, what fused that group. So, special shout out to the participants of the 2022 Resilience Retreat. And thanks also to Fitzroy Island, an amazing location off Cairns, 45-minute ferry ride, national park too, so pretty spectacular.
Very specky. Nice. I reckon that's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Yeah, that's 2022.
Well, we wish you all the best for the holiday period. Hope you fill your unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run. Do some things for yourself, your friends and your family. Yeah,
and we look forward to seeing you into 2023. We already have some pretty cool guests lined up and in the mix. And so we'll, what do we got to be? 21 episodes.
21 and 1 RV.
21 and 1. I reckon we can at least match that. Not that it's a competition, but we definitely look forward to keep having interesting conversation with amazing people who are going a little further in their lives, and absolutely look forward to a continued engagement. So please keep the feedback coming. We revel in hearing from you. Debrief at unforgiving60.com. Reach out, certainly any suggestions for interviewees, any suggestions for improvements, any bouquets, any brickbats, send them in.
Take care. See you later on.
Cheers.
Turn on my TV, said I don't believe it, man. Flick through the paper, I don't understand. Death and destruction, if they're coming for this. I can't believe it, man. What is this fucking mess? I don't my bedroom and lock the silence out. We'll start our own world and then we'll walk about. Lay here beside me, searching for a better way. If tomorrow never comes, how will it end today? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Destruction, making path. Can't feel my arm, can feel my legs. I got no feeling left. I don't believe it. 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 Oh, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Yeah.
Now to the debrief. We try to go always a little further in this podcast and greatly appreciate your input. Please let us know your feedback, the good, the bad, or the ugly. Also, if you know someone who is living a life less ordinary, we'd love to hear about them. You can get in touch at debrief@unforgiving60.com. That's debrief@unforgiving60.com. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends and write a review for us on Apple Podcasts. Until next episode, keep filling your unforgiving minutes with 60 seconds worth of distance run. See you next time on the Unforgiving 60.
Jump in my car again, the radio comes on. There's people dying, maybe in Taiwan. Beat up the Moscow and down to Kyrgyzstan. Can someone please explain? I don't understand. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Well, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Coming to my bedroom.